you could be anywhere. You could be in Silicon Valley. You could be in the alley in New York City. Why London? And everyone on this show, we talked about it, is that, it doesn't have the big exits, doesn't have the number of IPOs. If anything, it's, everyone talks, okay, fintech has potential, fintech does, but, do you find opportunity?
So, I came here accidentally, right? So I came here, I
You?
came here, I had a bad breakup. I did want to go back to Stanford. And I said, when I applied to business school, there were a handful of places I could go. One of them was to go back to Stanford. Another one was to come all the way out to London. I had a bad breakup. It was with a Stanford girl. Do you want to go back there? I moved out here, relocated. And then accidentally, Accel called me up and said, can you help out on the portfolio? And I joined the firm. And I kind of went to business school, but really most of the time I was working at Accel. And then I stayed at Accel for a couple of years after school. And I realized, the world was shifting in Europe. And if you look, you look at New York had the same shift, right? But New York is a very vibrant tech economy right now, lots of investors chasing after stuff. There are not that many investors chasing after stuff anywhere in Europe. It's a third the size of the market in the US. And I would argue the quality is going up and to the right in terms of people who can actually build these large businesses. And so I've been here for 8 years. I got permanent residency a year ago, so did Rob. Both of us ended up here almost accidentally. We both liked the international aspect, but we both see it as huge market opportunity where they're not that, in terms of absolute numbers, there are not that many investors. In terms of relative investors, there are not that many investors who have deep connections to the Valley. Not that many folks who can pick up the phone and call up one of the Google board directors and facilitate an intro. We're fortunate because we both came from that ecosystem and we know these guys, so it's easier for us. And that's an advantage, and it's a service that most entrepreneurs here don't get. And there are not that many investors who are trained in the Silicon Valley way of building things, which is try and build something that can truly be great, right? If someone asks you, can you be a $1 billion company, you have an answer. Your next question should be, can you be a $10 billion company? Can you be a $100 billion company? And, risk in the UK and risk in Europe is it's not understood the same way as it is in the Valley, where you're always shooting for something bigger and greater. So, I would argue we're both two Americans, kind of fish out of water, right? Maybe we should go back to America, and we probably could be reasonably successful out on the West Coast.
Gray squirrels.
We're gray squirrels. Sometimes we're annoying. Sometimes we're off-putting because not everyone thinks this way. We're brash. We're in your face. We're young. But there's a big market opportunity for the guys who are building these kinds of businesses. Again, we've been fortunate. They come to us and they like what we stand for. Not every single person does. So we're binary in that sense. But if you're going to try and build one of these things, I think we can actually offer something in this market. And I think this is a market that needs people like us. I would love to see another 4 or 5 folks like us, 4 or 5 firms like us, not even people like us, because that would revitalize this economy, right? We need more money. We need more of this attitude. The more of it that you get, the more of a community you get around it, and the bigger the entire thing gets. One of my biggest disappointments here still to this day, and I talk a lot about this, is I think employees don't get enough stock options. And this is a huge cultural difference between America and specifically the West Coast, not even the East Coast, the West Coast, where, you create 20-25% option pool for your employees. And the reason why you do this as an investor, and the reason why you encourage it as an investor, is not so you can make as much money on that deal, because obviously you're going to dilute, right? You're going to give away a percentage of your company to employees. But those employees are going to go off, and, most engineers are going to go off, and if they get rich, they're going to invest in other engineering stuff. They're going to invest in the next wave of startups. They're going to have some capital to go experiment. And that's how you get the YouTubes, right? The PayPal guys, the YouTube guys were not PayPal executives. They were like engineers at PayPal, but they made enough money to not have to worry about rent, which allowed them to go off and build something like YouTube, which turned out to be a great outcome. So you want to see wealth get recycled, and you want to take a very long-term view. I don't think there are enough people in Europe who have this kind of view. So I would imagine, I would argue that folks like us are in many ways necessary for the ecosystem here to get stronger. But I want more of us here, and that's hard given how bad the fundraising climate is for folks like us.
It's interesting. Simon said the same thing from DFJ.
Sure.
The last thing you would expect, a capitalist to want is competition, But I guess for you, it expands the market.
It expands the market. I mean, it's hard work building these companies, right? And you need a collection of people around the table. You need the entrepreneurs, you need the executives, you need the engineers, and you need the money, right? So, it can't just be one person or 2 people or 5 people supporting the economy. It's much easier when there are 20 or 30 people.
I like your website. One of the things he says on there is, "We believe Silicon Valley matters." And, it's one short sentence, but it says a lot about your whole mantra.
Yeah. I mean, we compare it, if you're going to build a financial company, You can be anywhere in the world today and trade, right? You can trade on a boat, right, if you wanted to. But, for connections and for knowing flow, you're probably going to be much more successful if you came out of London or New York. You could even come out of Dubai or Singapore, but it's probably not to the same level as New York or London, because that's where all the really smart people, that's where the major leagues are. That's where the Premier League is. So that's where you really want to be trained. Our industry, as much as it's getting global, and it's getting very global, very distributed, the center of our industries to this day is still Silicon Valley. So you want to be as plugged into that community as possible. The more plugged in you are, the more chances of success you have. You don't necessarily need to be there. I would argue in some cases you do, in some cases you don't, but you need to be plugged into that community. And that's why we think it matters so much. And there are not enough people in London, or anywhere in Europe, I think, who are as well connected into that ecosystem as they should be. There's a little bit of a disconnect and a divide. It's shrinking, but there's still a little bit of a disconnect today.
Like what you're doing and thought, you could apply it to their part of the business.
In this whole process, I'm just curious, how much is the technology and the business idea, and how much is the person behind it? I mean, that's why we do this show, to find out the people behind the tech, and a lot of people that have been here said they invest in people ultimately.